Hello again. I'm back with part 2 of my desert vivarium build. In this video I will be setting up an enclosure for my rescue leopard gecko. I wanted to make a habitat reminiscent of the Mojave Desert, and I discussed my rationale for doing so in part 1. I'll throw up a link to that video. To get the look of the Mojave, I collected my hardscape elements from the wild. I found a few pieces of cholla cactus skeleton, some juniper branches, some dried desert grass, and a few small rocks and pebbles to use in the setup. The characteristic rock formations in the Joshua Tree region of the Mojave Desert are quartz monzonite. This is an extremely heavy rock similar to granite. Needless to say, I couldn't use much real rock in a glass vivarium without risking cracking the bottom. Since I still wanted to capture the look of a monzonite rock formation, I decided that I would have to make faux monzonite. To accomplish this, I used Great Stuff spray foam to make the formations, and then I used silicone and washed decomposed granite to texture the surface and to create a convincing but lightweight replica. Here's a real monzonite rock compared to my faux monzonite replicas. I think the technique worked fairly well. I then used a sheet of styrofoam insulation in my faux monzonite rocks to form the base of my rock formation, and I used real monzonite rocks and pebbles higher up in the part of the formation that will be most visible in the enclosure. I added 2 planters where I could add plants into the structure, as well as dead branches I collected from the desert to add texture. All foam in the structure was covered with silicone and washed decomposed granite to create the appearance of a pile of monzonite boulders like those that make up the landscape in the Mojave. This structure will provide both aesthetic and practical benefits to the enclosure. My genuine monzonite rock that makes up the top of the structure will be positioned under my heat element so that it absorbs heat throughout the day and radiates that heat at night right after the lights shut off. It will also provide enrichment in the form of a climbing area for my gecko, as well as concealing one of her hides behind the structure. Overall, I was pleased with how it turned out. It is still heavy, but it's much lighter than if I had used real rocks. Once I completed my rock structure, it was time to make my other hardscape elements. The human hide was constructed out of a Tupperware container and built with a rock and expanding foam to hide the top of the container. Substrate was silicone to the foam so that it could be buried flush with the substrate and appear as a burrow. I also used dried grass collected from the desert to create texture in the Now that's gonna fuck up everything. I also used dried grass collected from the desert to create texture. I embedded grass into foam and silicone substrate to the base so that they would appear as if they were growing directly out of the substrate. Finally, it was time to create my backdrop. I had a photograph that I took in Joshua Tree National Park printed as a large poster, and I adhered it to the back of the enclosure. I took this photo from the ground facing up to try and capture the perspective that a small terrestrial animal would have. I had to adjust it a bit to fit it exactly how I wanted after the enclosure setup, but overall I am pleased with how it turned out. Next, I added my substrate layer, separated from my substrate with a piece of fiberglass window screen. I arranged my monzonite structure and added my substrate. After a fair amount of experimenting, I was able to position my rock structure, my gecko's burrow, and my remaining hardscape elements in place. I wasn't sure exactly what would look best as I set up the enclosure, so I kept moving items around until I had everything the way that I wanted. To plant the vivarium, I used mostly domestic analogs to plants that occur naturally in the Mojave Desert. I planted a sage, grasses, 2 species of California native succulents, a domestic sempervivum succulent, trailing verbena, and an actual Joshua tree that I grew from the seed. Finally, I added extra small rocks, branches, and choya skeleton to complete the setup, and I gave it all a spray down. I would later add a bit of substrate collected from the desert to the top of the substrate I already applied, and I would add leaf litter consisting of mostly sage leaves. I also repositioned my backdrop to better suit the overall look. I used a sort of shotgun approach to my cleanup crew. I released superworm beetles, mealworm beetles, common roly-polies, temperate springtails, and powder orange isopods. I've also seen a number of springtail-sized creatures pop up on their own in the arid environment. These may be springtails that are adapted to arid conditions or present in the substrate and branches I collected, or they may be another small insect that I'm not 100% sure. I might look at them under a microscope at some point. But in any case, I'm glad to see that I'm getting some bioactivity in addition to the species I started with. After a few weeks, it appears that the beetles are the standout winners. There are still some roly-polies, and a few powder orange isopods have taken refuge under the water dish, but the setup is mostly too dry for isopods, with the exception of inside the humid burrow. The beetles do readily consume gecko droppings, so they're working out really well as a cleaning crew. After letting my plants and cleanup crew species acclimate for about a month, it was time to introduce my gecko. I have two main hides for her, a cooler, humid burrow that she seems to prefer, and a warm, dry hide. I have a water dish for her towards the back of the enclosure as well, and I also have rocks and branches for climbing, and I do use a food bowl, though I took it out for the purpose of filming this video. She seems to enjoy her new enclosure, and she's very active as soon as the lights go out. She will climb up rocks to warm up on the surface that is still radiating heat, and she will explore the cage to forage for food. Let me know if you have any questions about how I set up the enclosure or how it's going in the future. I will try to post updates, time permitting. This type of setup is a first for me, and there's not a ton of information out there about how to make actual desert vivariums, so the experiment is ongoing. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like me to keep making these types of videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can also hit that bell icon. I don't know what it does, but other people on YouTube keep telling me to hit it when I watch their crappy videos. In any case, there's a deadly virus that lives inside, and the air quality outside is so bad from wildfire smoke that the air quality sensors themselves have all malfunctioned. So if you need me, I'm going to strap on this respirator and just kind of sit quietly until things